The reason we came together today to talk about parish finances is because I realized that in this climate, for one, in church together, giving stewardship in the normal ways that we do, and so it's a time we need to think intentionally about how to encourage people to give stewardship, from basic questions like how do I send in my tithe, to are there other options for that? Are there other ways that we need to creatively look at managing stewardship? And also there's just other financial questions. Maybe the parishes, we're going to see a dip in our giving, or maybe we need to look for help for maintaining our payroll, or how can we reach out to parishioners who are having financial struggles in their families. So those are all things I'm hoping to cover today, or at least begin the conversation on. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. And I know I'd like to hear from Father Aris first, and then George, if you know, for example, like what percentage of your giving is cash, or what percentage if you have online giving already, and how this has impacted you so far, if you have that number, and how you've encouraged parishioners with their giving the last couple weeks. So Father Aris is at Holy Trinity in San Francisco. George is across the bay at Castro Valley Holy Resurrection. And so I'd love for them to each share their experiences.
Sure. George, why don't you go first?
Okay.
Unless you want me to go first, Thomaida?
No, that's fine. George can go. We can't hear you, George.
I'll go then. Where's George? I don't even see him now.
Figure out your sound.
All right. George, radio check.
Okay, he's going to cut it.
Well, George, I'll go. So, I mean, our trays are just a pittance. Most everything is done through stewardship, and most people who are doing stewardship either just have their credit card debited, or pay through their credit card. Good number of people still pay by check, but the checks have been coming in. I don't think this is, as far as stewardship, this is impacting us precious little at this point. So we try to do a weekly video, and last week I did a video where I thanked everybody who'd been supporting the church, and the day after that, got a very major donation. I just opened a major donation this morning. So I think the biggest thing is just get in touch with the parishioners. If you're staying, doing all the things I know all the priests are doing, which is going down your list and calling people to check on them, continue to send out emails, continue to send out videos, move things. So, I think all of us have moved our meetings online, so keep doing your meetings and keep connecting with streaming the services. And I don't foresee a damage to stewardship. I see probably an uptick, from all the top givers happening. I think where this is, the cliche of this is the underlying condition. In Europe, if you read the Greek newspapers, they say that Angela Merkel is the underlying condition of the COVID virus. But I don't care about European politics. But if you look at what's happening with our parishes that have ignored stewardship, and the Archdiocese, which by and large has given lip service to stewardship, that's really our underlying condition, because everybody who's dependent on a Greek festival, especially if it's this time of year, that income's gone. So I think that this is like it's doing with every other aspect of life, is just exposing any existing flaws. So if any parishes have been on the fence as to whether or not to take stewardship seriously, it's probably time to get off the fence and start addressing it.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. You'd think we'd have this nailed down by now. So yeah, as Thomaida mentioned, I'm from Resurrection Parish in Castro Valley, California. I don't have exact numbers. I actually sent a quick text to our treasurer waiting for him to reply in terms of split between electronic giving and paper giving. I'd like to say that it's probably half and half. We do see many parishioners that put their stewardship checks or cash in the tray during Sundays. And clearly, because that's not happening, they now have to find a different way to get that stewardship to us. We receive a good proportion in the mail, but we do have demographically, and not that I'm trying to paint everybody with the same brush, but I would say more of our younger professionals have taken advantage of online giving. We do have an online giving platform on our website, and we get a good proportion, but I don't have exact percentages for you.
Yeah,
I agree with Father's comment that this would be a time when you would think people would want to give more fervently. I will say some of you may have been on the Zoom call last night. We hosted a Zoom call on the CARES Act, the financial aspects with parish council treasurers last night. There was an informal poll that was done, and we asked the question of how parishes felt that their stewardship would be impacted. And it wasn't specific to stewardship. It was more, their financial picture as a whole. I have to be honest, the results were pretty grim. Now, granted, we were talking to treasurers, and finance people by nature tend to be more conservative. But it looked like there was going to be some, at least at this point in time, some significant impacts expected to parishes' financial health.
So I would argue that I think a lot of that too is that people don't know, they haven't been given like in their check, and I've encouraged parishes that I've talked to go ahead and send that in an email or with other messaging. Just say, by the way, if you were wondering where to send your check, and make it very easy, because I agree with you, George. I think a lot of people want to give, and they want to know where to direct things, but we need.
You're breaking up, Thomaida.
Yeah, I don't know if it's
just
me,
make it
we're
really easy and obvious for them. So,
Try cutting your video so you can use more bandwidth for audio.
Have Father Aris mentioned that he did a video message thanking everybody for their gifts, which is one great touch, a way to encourage people who are giving and connect with donors about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, my question. Okay, so I went ahead and messaged my question to George in the chat.
Yep. So do you want me to just type the answer back to everybody? You can continue, and I can just type the answer back.
Go ahead and voice it.
Yeah, so, the question that we were asked is, what have we done to encourage giving? We haven't explicitly gone out, but I think subliminally, what we try and do when we stream our services, for example, through YouTube. Sorry, can everybody hear? Okay.
Yeah.
So when we stream our services through YouTube, when the YouTube feed comes up, in the chat section of YouTube, we'll make statements about, lighting a 7-day vigil candle, or online candle giving as the services begin. That's one way of doing it. We still publish a weekly email bulletin, and in that email bulletin, we remind people that we have online giving available on our website. If you don't have an online giving button or online giving link on your website, it is highly encouraged that you put one in. It can certainly be done very tastefully, but it provides, an avenue for those that may not know that something like that is available. Explain how to do.
George,
Yeah.
can I interrupt it? It's Karen Reese. I'm
Hi,
the
Karen.
secretary, so but I can kind of respond a little bit. From the other comment that you had, we have seen that people are buying candles and through that online giving. We also have seen that we have a note when we have those YouTube sessions that also says something about giving for stewardship, and people have been sending a lot of checks in. So we are seeing, even though we can't get them to do online giving, we are seeing a lot more people sending their checks in because they can't. I don't know the ratio, but we are seeing that people are continuing their stewardship.
Yeah, that's great. You know, one of the questions is, our parishes only using PayPal? I can't speak for many other parishes. I will say our parish does not use PayPal. Our parish actually uses now, Karen, if you remember, please jump in. I can't remember the name of the provider. And I can check that as we're talking right now.
Vanco, V-A-N-C-O.
Vanco, that's right. So we have an underlying PDS system, which is the system that the Archdiocese has been promoting, and many other churches use PDS. Vanco links directly into PDS. So when you click our giving button, that's who we use. But there's nothing preventing people from using simple, straightforward credit card giving. Square is another one. Many people have Square accounts because they use Square for their festivals. So you can use Square. You can certainly use PayPal. You know, any online giving platform can be connected to your website. Does that cover what you were hoping, Thomaida?
Well, the other question that came was about connecting with QuickBooks.
Connecting with QuickBooks. So there are, I do know that there are donor sites. Donor Perfect is one that comes to mind. So if any of you use Donor Perfect, where you collect information on incoming donations and you maintain a database of donors, I know Donor Perfect connects into QuickBooks. I suspect other ones do as well. We have not made that direct connection to the best of my knowledge in our parish, but I do believe that we can connect PDS into QuickBooks. It hasn't been done yet, but I believe that PDS can also be connected into QuickBooks. And those are about the only two that I know. Certainly, I do know that with QuickBooks, you have the ability to download bank statements and banking transactions from most major banks out there. There is the ability to download credit card data directly from your financial institution into QuickBooks. So QuickBooks is very robust when it comes to integrating with other platforms. But I am not knowledgeable enough on what all those platforms might be.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. This is the digital toolkit for parishes. I don't know if you can hear me. And there's also
Can't hear you now, Thomaida. Is that just me?
No, we can't hear
Tomaida,
you.
we can't hear you. It's Father Tom. Tomaida, redo it.
Thomaida, if you can hear us, you know, perhaps stop sharing your screen for a moment. No.
All right.
Okay, Thomaida, can you hear us now?
I think she left.
She may be,
Reboot her
Yeah.
modem.
she might be logging back in.
So while we're waiting, something I did this morning, because I'm trying to do a weekly video for adults and one for kids. I did a video up in the church walking around pointing at the empty 7-day candle stands and reminding people to send in names for us to pray for, me to pray for. But I think that, I know I had one of my people last night on the call that was about the light a candle, some online thing. I think Boca first started it. You guys familiar with this?
I heard about it. Yep.
But it's I mean, we've got kind of the same thing set up with a different platform, but I think that there's a lot of potential there for people to be sending in names to pray for them, and then when you do the online streaming, to show those candles lit. I think it's a good visual cue, if you will. But I know, George, I think it's important you talk about, for people who haven't heard about it, talk about the CARES program.
Yeah, I can jump into that. I just wanted to say, Father, you make actually really good points. And I think I mentioned it earlier in that when we start our YouTube stream, we do put messaging down in the chat section of YouTube, letting people know that we are able to take donations for 7-day candles or just candles in general. And we do try and make sure that all those vigil candles that you see at the front are all lit. It actually really makes a difference to people. The first couple services that we streamed under these circumstances, people were seeing unlit vigil candles up front, and it was depressing to a lot of people. And that's kind of what hit the message home for us. To be able, you really have to think outside the box sometimes. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I would say for parishes, because thank God I'm no longer the chairman of the national ministries. I'm still involved, but I know that the majority of our parishes are depending on festivals to make their budget. And if your festival's spring or summer, it's gone. And even in the fall, I'm not sure how many people are going to want to show up and buy food from a vendor anymore in those settings. So it's time to be honest with the people and say, we've got to change the way we do business right now. There's no tomorrow, basically. And you probably all read the Metropolitans took a 3-month pay reduction, but the Archdiocese lacking income from our parishes, there was going to be a cascading effect of doom and gloom. George mentioned being on that phone call last night with people from all over the country. By and large, we are ahead of everybody with regard to how well we're doing on stewardship. There's one metropolis, I think their average is still right around 300 a household. And so, they're toast. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how you get people from 300 to 3,000 in a month. It doesn't happen. Yeah. We're positioned much better, but still, all of us need to be much more serious about parishioner giving, because that's all that's left. That's all there ever should have been in the first place, but that's all that's left. Even that's people, right. If you had a banquet hall, there are banquets going on. If you had a gym you rented out, there's no gym rentals, there's no nothing. Right. Yeah. But it's okay. It's, it'd be like if you were out in the wilderness and somebody said, well, there's a lot of non-poisonous snakes here and you can kill them and eat them. You say, well, okay, I'm gonna eat those snakes, right? So you don't have a choice. In my estimation, none of us have a choice, and so we need to. I think we need to keep readdressing stewardship. But the key is if you're feeding people and connecting with people, and right now we have a unique opportunity to feed and connect with people, and so I think this is a good moment to do it, quite frankly. Yeah. And if we can dig out from this by midsummer, and then we'll know how the rest of 2020 is looking in each of our parishes, then it's time to it's time to sprint towards the finish and tell people exactly what our financial position is, and say, okay, we got to get there together. I'll let you turn over to George, but when I was in the Southeast, there was a parish that was very festival. It was Charleston, very festival dependent. And then one year a hurricane ran right up Charleston and destroyed their festival, and all changed their stewardship forever. So this is kind of the same thing for all of us, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with Father. And, Thomaida has been asking us to continue on this conversation around communicating to our parishes, excuse me, about finances in general. And I agree, it is important. And, we had discussions on the call yesterday. Father was referring to the Archdiocesan call. We actually had a separate call with parish council treasurers. We had a call with parish council presidents and clergy in the afternoon. Many of you participated in that. We had another more detailed call on the CARES Act, which we'll talk about a little bit later with treasurers. But, we had one parish, and I can't remember which, that said, hey, look, we're not really dependent on any of that stuff. Most of our money comes from tithing or stewardship. We anticipate we'll be okay. It's a shame I can't remember the name of the parish, but it sounded to me as if they were a fairly small and, fairly young demographic parish, and they didn't seem to have a whole lot of problems. But there was another parish, there were other parishes that said, hey, we rely very heavily on our festival and renting out our halls and doing other things. And the guidance that we gave, not that we have any more information than all of you, but the guidance that we gave is assume you will not be having any of those events this year. Now that might not be the case. Who knows? By the time we get to July or August or September, but to Father's earlier point, are you going to want, even if they lift the shelter-in-place orders, is everyone going to want to go and, immerse themselves in large crowds? Probably not. Even if we are able to have festivals and galas and all this other stuff, chances are that revenues will be significantly lower than what they would have been in years prior. So it does become very important. It's a great opportunity now to keep talking to our parishioners and to be transparent with our parishioners and sharing financial information. Our parish hasn't necessarily gone out and done that. The parish council meets virtually every 2 weeks. I'm not on the parish council anymore, but I do know that they have updates on their financial situation without explicitly going out and telling parishioners how we're doing. We do, as I said, indirectly, we provide resources for parishes to continue with their stewardship, whether it's mailing in their checks, whether it's turning them on to online giving, online candles, and we put that in weekly bulletins. We will put it out in, separate mailings. We'll put it out in YouTube feeds. That's what we've been doing. But it is important for parishes to really let their parishioners know that without their continued support, and this is where it becomes difficult. I'm going to defer to Father Aris or the other Reverend Fathers on the call, because it truly does become pastoral. You don't want to come across as being in it for the money. But the grim reality is that, we are organizations that are dependent on cash in order to be able to run. We have employees, some few, some many. We need to be able to pay our custodians. We need to be able to pay our office administrators. We need to be able to pay our bookkeepers. We need to, we don't have a choice. We have to pay our electricity and gas and everything else. So we need to find a good pastoral way to hit the point home to our parishioners. Father, do you want to jump in and say anything else?
Well, I think you're right. That's none of us should be ashamed to talk about money. It's one of the subject, maybe the subject Jesus talked about the most is money. The government may regard us as non-essential, but we understand that what we're doing is the most important thing imaginable, because we're talking about eternal salvation. We're talking about life in abundance in this world and helping the poor, all the things the church does. So we shouldn't be ashamed to ask people to fund that. And I know none of us are. And, I think for me, my attitude right now is connecting with people and helping people getting through the shock, and then seeing seeing where all this lands and how soon we start to get back to life that's normal. I think that if you're talking another 4 to 6 weeks, that's great, and then we can regroup and at the second half of the year start to address giving. But as we've talked about at our parish, if this turns out to be very, very protracted, then we're going to have some sort of a soft-edged but direct appeal midsummer, if we're all still sheltered in place, about
Uh-oh.
Did we lose Father?
Looks like we might have lost Father.
We may have lost Father.
Father,
Okay,
we lost you. Father Ari, fly back in.
Okay, well, while he's doing that, maybe I'll jump in very quickly because there are a couple questions in the chat section that Thomaida has put forward to me. So, every parish has to decide how to best, in my opinion, every parish has to decide how to best communicate their financial situation with their parishioners. I said in my opinion, it needs to be very pastoral in nature. And it is true that, some parishes will probably save money in certain areas because we're not doing coffee hours. We're not having lunches, we're not having these gatherings. So certain expenses will go down. But if we're still looking to stay connected with our parishioners, we might be spending more money on camera and audio equipment so that we can do live stream. Or we may have found that we now need to purchase Zoom accounts because we need to have, more, meetings. I will tell you, our parish just started. Our parish council president came up with the idea, or a couple people came up with the idea, to have virtual coffee hours. So now, we needed an account that could service, up to 100 people. So that we could do, after divine services on Sundays, we have people logging in to do virtual coffee hours. We're actually going to have our first broad one this upcoming Sunday. But, this is where people are trying to come up with out-of-the-box ideas to keep their parishioners engaged. But some of that stuff costs money. So it's really up to each parish to determine how they want to share financial information. There's, one idea for some that may work for some parishes is, share a simplified financial statement with them on a monthly basis and say, here's how we're doing, as opposed to just waiting for a general assembly. There was a question on how often that should happen. I can't speak for every parish. There are some questions as to whether or not you can even hold a general assembly now, because the UPR requires those assemblies, requires people to be present. Now, you can say that we are in unique times, and if we provide some kind of login option or some kind of electronic option where people are automatically logged, then you can have some kind of general assembly. That's not for me to address. I think we would need to go to the metropolis for that and make sure we understood what our options were. But why would we wait for a general assembly to share financial information if we feel that it would be beneficial to our parishioners? Maybe we want to do that more frequently. Again, that's going to vary from parish to parish. You all know your parishes better than we do. That might work great for some parishes. It might not work very well for others. Father, you're back. I see that you're back.
Yeah, I don't know about. I don't know who was my fault or your fault. I have no idea. Anyway, it's magic.
You can blame me, Father. It wouldn't be
Did you want to go and cover cares so we make sure everybody gets totally up to speed on that?
I'm happy to do it if you all think now's the right time. Thomaida, are you okay with that? Okay, great. I can do that. I will share my screen, and please send me a chat message or speak up if I happen to be breaking up. My bandwidth is pretty good, but the more we do this stuff, the more challenging we have, the challenges we can have. So judging by many of you on the call, I know that many of you have probably seen a lot of this information. As I mentioned earlier, we shared this with parish council presidents and clergy yesterday afternoon. And we shared it with parish council treasurers last night, and we went into some more detail. I am not going to put everything up. I'm just going to put a couple things up If I've gone too fast, or if I've not covered things that you really want to see, feel free to ask me questions, but I'm also sensitive of the time. Can everybody see what's up on the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is a supplemental slide deck that we put together specifically for our metropolis, just to hit the key points with everybody. The Archdiocese itself has created a 10 or 11 slide deck that provides a little more detail on the CARES Act. I'm going to cover the high points through here and tell you up in the call later, then we can do that. So the CARES Act, excuse me, sorry, didn't mean to be doing that. So the CARES Act, you know, CARES stands for, sorry, my mind's at a blank. CARES stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It is a federal subsidy program that was passed and signed into law late last week. It is actually part 3 of a much broader act that is out there to provide relief to businesses and nonprofits of all sizes across a broad spectrum of industries. As it pertains to us, there are some key features of the CARES Act that are listed out on this slide. I'm not going to read through every one of them. The biggest one, and the one that people have been talking about the most, is that first bullet. These are loans that are available to small businesses, and for purposes of CARES, the definition of a small business has been expanded to include nonprofits. Parishes qualify under the definition. The long and the short of it is that parishes can apply for loans at extremely favorable interest rates, 0.5%, but that is likely going to be increased to 1%. And these loans can be fully forgivable, partially or fully forgivable if certain conditions are met. And the application window for those loans actually opens today, even though we are finding that the financial institutions processing these loans still don't have all the information they need from the Department of the Treasury, and that window may be deferred until early next week. And there are other provisions that people can take advantage of through payroll tax deferrals and retention credits and the other things that you see here. By the way, this slide deck is going to be made available on the Metropolis website, and we'll talk about that in a minute. There are links embedded throughout. Probably within the next couple of days, you should be able to go onto the Metropolis website and get the presentation. For those of you that participated in the 2 calls that I mentioned, Father John Constantine would have emailed this presentation out to you already, so you probably have it. Okay, so what are some immediate actions that we as parishes can do? First off, if you don't feel that you're financially savvy enough to fill out these loan applications or to understand all the information available to us, involve your treasurers, involve your accountants and bookkeepers, involve other finance professionals you may have, accounting professionals you may have in your parishes. The first thing that you need to do is calculate your eligible amount that you are able to apply for. Fill out the paperwork. The paperwork is very easy to fill out. It is a very short 2-page loan. Again, we have provided a sample loan application in our Dropbox and within the materials. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to fill out the loan paperwork. The items that we've highlighted in bold here and in red font, this is very critical, crucial information to be aware of. Many of our parishes have, for a variety of different reasons, have been using the Archdiocese's federal employee identification number, what we call the tax ID number, or the Metropolis tax ID number. Please don't use that number when you fill out your loan application. You may be using that number for a variety of different reasons. I mean, historically, the key reason why some parishes have been using this number is when the parishes were established many, many years back. All the parishes were direct extensions of the Archdiocese. and they felt that in order to have charitable contribution status applied to them, they needed to be under the umbrella of the Archdiocese. And they used that Archdiocesan tax ID number to be able to give comfort, if you will, to their parishioners and to others that their donations would be tax-free. That is not the case. Under IRS regulations, every church is automatically considered for 501c3 or charitable contribution status. You do not have to apply for that. It is automatically granted to you if you are a church. And if your bank or a parishioner or a business or anybody else tries to argue differently, you can, with great comfort, push back and say, no, that's not the case. Go to the IRS website and see for yourself. So if you're using those tax ID numbers that end in these sets of 5 digits that are in front of you on the screen, please do not. Use a new tax ID number. You can go directly to the IRS website. It takes 5 minutes to apply for a tax ID number. The granting of a tax ID number can be almost instantaneous. Might take up to a couple hours, perhaps even overnight, worst case scenario. But in most cases, it happens instantly. The reason why this is important is because the Archdiocese itself is going to apply for a small business loan, and it will apply using its own tax ID number. If a parish happens to apply using the Archdiocesan tax ID number, and that application is processed before the Archdiocese's application is processed, you could disqualify the Archdiocese. And that would have some significant ramifications because the Archdiocese's payroll is much, much larger than any one parish's payroll. And for everybody's information, the Archdiocese's payroll includes payroll through the metropolises. So our metropolitan himself, just like all the other metropolitans, and the staff working at the metropolis offices, they are under the Archdiocesan payroll. So we wouldn't want to jeopardize any of that. Okay, that being said, involve your payroll provider to assist with payroll tax deferrals. Your payroll providers, if you use third-party payroll providers, they have all this information at their fingertips. They can help you. And talk to your financial institution. A lot of people have asked, who do I submit my application to? Or I've talked to my credit union and they're not accepting applications. They're not participating. Well, so we have found out that they have to participate. Federal law requires them to participate. The Department of the Treasury is working with them to make sure that they are compensated fairly in order to participate. And you may have to educate your financial institution to say, hey, I know I qualify. I understand you might still be waiting to get information from the Department of the Treasury. That's fine, but know that I've submitted my application to you and I expect to now be in your queue. That's important because the funds available under these loans are limited. $350 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but that is available to anyone and everyone that meets the criteria, and the criteria are pretty loose. Okay. What are some metropolis resources? As I mentioned, this is now a dated presentation. We had a call yesterday. We provided information to treasurers. We've provided information to presidents. Feel free to reach out to them and they can provide you with some of the resources. Thomaida earlier tried to put up the Archdiocesan COVID-19 resource page. You can go and access that yourself. If you go onto the Archdiocesan website, you will see at the very top, there's a ribbon that provides a crisis management or crisis resources. You click on that, it'll show you a very broad toolkit. In that toolkit is also the CARES Act information that I mentioned from the Archdiocese. The metropolis itself has a COVID-19 resource page. That resource page will be built out to include this presentation and other financial information over the next couple of days. There is a Dropbox that has other helpful financial articles and resources. The link for that is provided within this presentation. And then the one that I really wanted to point out that I really liked is this suggested parish communication. So this suggested parish communication, and I'm going to see if I can find that when we finish this presentation. That was a letter that was created by Osama Dawood, who is the treasurer of St. George in Bakersfield. And he sent this out to all the Bakersfield parishioners. And this is not on CARES Act specifically, but this was a whole listing of resources that are available to individuals, self-employed individuals, businesses, you name it. This was done in an effort to help parishioners. So I thought it was an excellent communication. He has agreed for this to be used broadly by any of our parishes. So I encourage you to take a look. I can bring it up later so that you can see what that looks like. Metropolis contacts, those are available to you if you need to reach out to myself or Philippos Athanasiadis, who is now the chair of the National Ministries Allocation Committee for our metropolis, and a few other people that would be happy to help out, okay? And there are also links to external resources to help you with some of these loan offerings. So I've taken up much more than 10 minutes. I apologize for that, but I hope that that provides enough information or some of the information you were looking for. Am I still with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I did say, and I'm sorry, I am going to take up just a few more seconds. I wanted to put up that communication that I mentioned from Osama Dawood. So this is the letter that was sent out from St. George's to all their parishioners. And I'm not going to go through it, but you know, he does put in a nice opening paragraph, and then he goes in through bullet form. And he says, hey, look, here's all the stuff you've got available to you. And if you've got questions, contact me at the parish. Now, this is obviously specific to the state of California. And if you've got finance or accounting professionals within your states, you know, feel free to contact them, because each state does have some sort of relief measure. I know that that's true for Washington State and Oregon State. I'm sure others have it as well. But these are just examples of programs that are available at the state and the federal level for parishioners that they can take advantage of. This is very helpful because it will help with their cash flow. And if we help with their cash flow, that can also help with cash flow at the parish level. You know, examples are the elimination of penalties from withdrawing monies from an IRA or a 401k. The ability to provide student loans by employers that are tax-free, various insurance coverage enhancements, work study funds, food stamps, food banks, emergency grants, other forgivable loans, such as the ones we talked about. So Osama did an amazing job of putting all this together and sent it out to his parishioners. I would encourage all parishes to do the same. If for no other reason, then at least to let parishioners know that there are resources out there to help them and their families. And with that, I'll now be quiet.
George, a question that I know has been asked is, should every parish apply for this?
You know, it's a great question. The question has come up a couple times. Depending on who you ask, you may hear a different answer. So you're asking me, so I will give you my answer. So I will say, if you think that your parish is going to experience or has already started to experience financial difficulty. Now, let me just backtrack by saying the purpose of this loan program is employee retention, okay? That is your priests, that is your office people, that is your custodians, that may be your youth directors, that may be anyone else you have on a payroll or who you pay on a 1099 contractor basis. That is the purpose of this funding. There was one parish yesterday that said, hey, we don't have any of that. All we have is a 1099 priest who comes in and performs services periodically. I don't really feel that I need it. Should I still apply? So I'm gonna give a very Christian answer, and that is, if you don't feel that you're gonna need this money, if you feel that your parish is operating as it always has been and you don't expect any reduction in stewardship or other income, then I would say please leave those funds for those that truly do need it. That would be my guidance. Others would say, hey, look, the government's giving out free money. You'd be a fool not to take it. So I'm going to leave it to everybody's individual conscience. Based on what I've heard and what I've seen, I know that most of our parishes are going to have difficulty meeting their budgets this year if things continue the way that they're continuing. Rather than have to think about furloughing or laying off or doing work share programs with employees, it would be best to take advantage of this law.
George, did you see this question from Father Michael in the chat?
Yes. So the question is, funds can be used for other purposes besides employee retention. So that is partially true. So the qualification of the loan really is dependent on your payroll from the prior 12 months of the application period. So you would look at your total payroll. The payroll, it has to be capped at $100,000 per employee. So what that means is if you've got, and it's typically your parish priest, and I can tell you that if you're in the state of California, probably other states as well, but I'm just going to speak to California. If you're in the state of California and you pay your priest a salary, a housing allowance, an auto allowance, and perhaps a few other allowances, you're exceeding $100,000 anyway. So when you do the calculation of how much you're eligible for, you cannot exceed a salary of $100,000. And then you take your average monthly salary. So that the determination of what you're entitled to is based on salary. What you can actually spend that money on is a little bit broader. So you have to spend at least 75% of that loan on payroll. But you're also able to spend it on healthcare payments to your staff and to your priests. You're able to spend it on, for example, your priest pension payment, so the $700 a month that all parishes give, that qualifies. You're able to spend it on utilities, PG&E or your local electricity and gas equivalent, phone, cell charges. All those are considered eligible expenses. So eligible for what? Eligible for loan forgiveness. So if you retain all your employees in the 8-week period after you receive that loan, and you spend the full amount of those loan proceeds on all those qualifying items, then you qualify for 100% loan forgiveness. Does that answer the question, Father? Okay.
So Thomaida is keen for us to move on to the next section, which is helping parishioners who are in financial extremis. And that, before offering any thoughts, has anybody thought about that yet? Because it's not anything that we have come up against yet. Historically, we have dealt with that, and we've had parishioners come forward to help in a substantial way when people on the verge of losing their house, etc. We frankly have not talked about that in an organized fashion yet at our church. I don't know if anybody has addressed that or not in their own churches or thought about it yet.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what I really wanted to talk about here is the fact that they're not in need right now. I've been calling parishioners at my parish, and a lot of them are saying, yeah, we're not really sure what the future holds. We're okay right now. We have all the supplies we need. We're fine. But they don't have any work. There's a few families, right? And the news says that 1 in 5 American families are going to be impacted financially. that's going to be different, for each parish, what the exact percentages are. And so what I'm curious to discuss or get the wheels turning is right now, people want to give. Like I myself am like, direct me where to give, right? And people are sitting at home wishing they could help and knowing that healthcare workers and grocery store workers and other people are out in the fray and other friends are losing their jobs. So I think it's really important for the parishes. This is a time when people really want to express their generosity and they can't do it in person in many cases. So I think it's really important for us to say, like, give here, or, direct them to some external source, or to say, as a parish council, we're going to sit down and make a plan now, but we want you to give to our benevolence fund or whatever the equivalent is, because we're going to, in 2 months, we'll be ready for when those people have run out of their savings or their emergency funds. Because anybody in, from personal experience what situations, like if anybody is in any kind of event industry, if they're a freelancer, depending on contract work for different jobs that are, for example, like in a performance or producing or anything like that, these things are not happening. So they don't have any gigs, and pretty soon their resources will dry up. So I guess what I'm encouraging everybody to think about is how to direct the generosity of your parishioners to prepare to help people in a month or two. Does anybody have a comment on that?
Thomaida?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Bill. So one of the things I'm encouraging people to do is what we're calling the Corona Contribution Challenge. And that's for those that can afford to take the 4-figure payments that some people are going to be getting from the federal government, which is really a return of their tax money. And instead of, if they don't really need it, if they need it, obviously they should use it, but if they don't need it, to contribute it to the church with the hopes that the church can then set up a fund for either parishioners who need it, or in some cases, there may be some needs of the church. And that is essentially, I know it's a return of our tax dollars, but it's essentially found money. But the idea is then if the church can accumulate those refunds of that contribution, that's potentially another 1,200 plus, depending on how many in the family, that can go into that.
Right. Thank you. That's really great. And another, go ahead.
The other thing I was going to suggest to you is, in talking with some of the other fundraising organizations in the Christian world community, what they have suggested and what I've seen work is, particularly for parishes that are not as potentially well grounded as like Father Aris is with a culture of true stewardship, to actually reach out to, on a person by person private basis, with, again, blessed stewards, and asking them to make an additional contribution over above what their stewardship is for that same purpose, for the philanthropic needs that the parish may identify as being needed, either within its parish community or within the community in which it resides. And again, because of the opportunities of generosity, and as you mentioned, the spirits that many people who are blessed are feeling right now, this is the perfect time to have that conversation. The Metropolis Chicago is actually creating a fund drive, and they've announced a fund drive in that regard. But this can be done very effectively on a parish by parish basis. And you all know who those people are that can do something like this.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Anybody else want to share any ideas about that?
Thomaida, this is Karen from the Castro Valley Church. We've briefly talked about it, but it's good to hear some of these different ideas. But we felt that we needed to talk about that in the future. Like Father Aries and you said, that You know, we don't have any parishioners that are in need of help right now, but we also thought that we may go talk that idea about the $1,200, that if people felt that they don't need that, to donate it to the church to other people that may need it. So
Yeah,
I don't have any suggestions. I'm just sharing what we've actually talked about already.
thanks, Karen. Yeah, I would suggest everybody start talking about it now, because right now, if you're on social media, you're seeing that a lot of people are suggesting support small businesses, buy 10 gift cards to 10 small businesses, etc. Keep these businesses afloat so that they'll actually reopen after the ban on going out is lifted. And I see a lot of that, and I'm motivated, like, okay, I would like these businesses to survive. But even more than that, if my church is going to direct me to buy gift cards so that they have a stock of them in 2 months, or to put money in the benevolence fund, so that, because if my parish council communicated to me that, hey, we know that right now everybody's doing well and we're glad, but we know that this is going to impact a lot of us financially in the future, and we're making plans for how we're going to be able to address the needs of our parishioners, that would really, really help people to know, to just know that that's coming, because I think people are starting to experience that, or know that their funds are limited and they don't know who's going to step in and help them. So I think the more we can talk about it now, plan, and then be ready to communicate, that will really help. Stacy just wrote a message. Right. Yeah, his parish, like my parish, has a benevolence fund that can be used at the discretion of the clergy. You say we will be matching parishioners in need with the fund. Great. So I just encourage you, maybe you don't have that fund. Maybe that's not the way to go for your parish. Then, in addition to regular stewardship, because there's a lot of people that are keeping up their regular stewardship because they haven't been impacted financially, and their heart is at the church in prayer and thinking of the church and supporting the church. Those people also need other, they're the people that are usually volunteering at the food bank, and maybe they can't now, or maybe that's restricted. And so I think we need to provide communication to them about how to direct that generosity. Okay, so that is, that's the end of our programming. If you have any questions, feel free to type those in now, or raise your hand or mute, or unmute, I guess, to share them. And then I'm going to just share this from Stacy on the chat. There were a lot of good links that were sent via the chat, and I want you to know that I will be posting those when I post the video. This will show up on YouTube in a day or two, and I will send a link in the same email format that I sent the invitation. So thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry for all of our limitations with technology. Father Aris, I don't see, but I see his church. So in case he's not, there, he has reappeared. Father Aris, can you close our meeting with a prayer, please? Oh. We can't hear Father Aris, but.
Again, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O God Almighty, Lord of heaven and earth, and of all creation, visible and invisible, in your ineffable goodness, look down upon your people gathered in your name. Be our helper and defender in this day of affliction. You know our weakness. You hear our cry in repentance and contrition of heart. O Lord, who loves mankind, deliver us from the impending threat of the coronavirus. Send your angel to watch over us and protect us. Grant health and recovery to those suffering from this virus. Guide the hands of those who are charged with fighting this illness and the care of the ill. Preserve those who are healthy, that they may continue to serve you in peace and glorify your most honorable and majestic name, of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, now and forever, into the ages of ages. Amen.